I think it's probably time we kick off at this point, just because we don't want to take up too much of anyone's time. So I'll just start off by saying good afternoon to everyone, and thank you for joining us today for our first Demystifying Automation Live webinar. We have some interesting speakers for you today and some topics to cover. So, but before we do so, I just want to cover a couple of housekeeping rules if we can. So just to make you aware that the meeting today is being recorded, but there's no need to mute mics on, no cameras on. It's just the speakers that we can see today, so not to worry too much about that. And after the event today, we'll get in contact with a communication, and we'll share the link for our microsite and also for the recording for today, just so you can watch back if you wish to have a look at the material that we've covered. There'll also be an opportunity for a Q&A towards the end of the presentation, and there's a chat box on the right hand side, so it'll be at that point there where you can type in your questions and things, and there'll be a couple of poll questions throughout as well. They'll pop up and you can do a little vote, and we'll get a little bit interactive today just to see where your heads are at with the material that we're covering. So if we could just get to the next slide again, please, there, Lorraine. Great. So this is our agenda for today, and I'm going to pass you over to our speaker.
Good afternoon, and thank you for joining the Cognizant Demystifying Automation webinar, and welcome to what I hope will be a very insightful session. As a quick introduction, my name is Duncan Mears, and I head up our digital business operations at Cognizant across the UK and Ireland and across mainland European markets. The automation of business processes is one of the most talked about subjects amongst business leaders, and yet, as you also hear from some of the speakers today, there are many organisations that are yet to really benefit from the adoption of automation, and hence we wanted to run this webinar to help more companies adopt automation to drive business performance improvement. We have a great lineup of guests today who I'm delighted to introduce you. First up, we've got Henry Lyles, Director of Intelligent Automation and Continuous Improvement Centre of Excellence at McDonald's. Henry is responsible for setting the strategic vision, direction for the continuous improvement and intelligent automation programs across the McDonald's enterprise. Henry's got over 20 years of hands-on strategy, transformation, technology experience, is definitely a thought leader in intelligent automation and continuous improvement. I think you'll really enjoy what Henry's got to say a little bit later. Next, delighted to welcome Adam Fenwick, Vice President of RPA and Technology and one of the leaders at Automation Anywhere, one of the Cognizant automation partners. Adam's got a great deal of experience leading automation practice across the industry. In his 10th year working for Automation Anywhere, working with customers across Europe, prior to which he was in digital consulting for over 20 years. Again, Adam's passionate about the future of work and the role of digital workers in both the retail and consumer spaces. And last but not least, Guti Agaram, one of the Vice Presidents and Commercial Head for Cognizant's IPA practice across EMEA for Cognizant. Guti started his career in retail, actually selling fashion 24 years ago. Probably something he doesn't want me to be mentioning too much about. Certainly worked in consulting, system integration roles across 20 or so retail clients, from high street retailers to supermarkets and online retailers. Guti's got a huge amounts of experience working across 4 continents in Asia, US, Africa, and in Europe. He's passionate about digital and the impact of digital to organisations. Guti's actually won an award for the best programme and leader in digital from the Management Consulting Association. So great line of people today. I think we'll have a super engaging session. But with that, let me hand over to Guti, who will help us try and demystify automation. Over to you, Guti.
Thank you. So what are we covering today? So the 3 core areas that we're going to cover today. One is the core definition of intelligent automation. I mean, I think there are multiple views around this. So let's try to get to the bottom of what do we mean by automation and intelligent automation. We recently conducted a global survey across 4,000 executives for global 2,000 firms. And we want to bring the best of what have we seen, where are the clients in this journey, and is there something we can take away from that? With my colleague panelist, Adam, who's going to also cover some of the technology landscape, how it started with a simple RP and evolved into a very complex technology landscape. And last but not the least, I think, where do we start the journey of, what are the use cases that are relevant in automation and how do we bring this to life? This is where we would bring in Henry and talk about real life experience there. So moving on. On a lighter note, I think this is an interesting metaphor we use, which is like, the six blind men and the elephant. So not necessarily automation is the elephant in the room, but having said that, there are differing views across all our stakeholders. If you ask some of our customers, they think, oh, it's like the trunk, it's long and ongoing journey. Some of them say it's like the leg, the thick and the strong one out there. Some of them say, oh, it's basic automation like the tail. So moving on, actually, so what we thought is let's just reflect on how our analysts do see this. But what we are seeing is a convergence of the definition of automation. I think it's getting quite standardized. The three key words, if we look at, we just listed the core analysts, but with no disregard or disrespect to others, but it's more importantly just trying to say that it's all converging into three key words if you were to summarize the whole slide. One, it's around processes, whether it's simple or complex processes. Two, it's beyond core RPA. I think the definition of automation is expanded beyond automation with the infusion of the words that you can see is AI, ML, NLP. So the complexity, the cognitive infusion into the automation. And the third and the most important area is I think it's always about process. Process and outcomes remain the core of the definition of automation. So converging all three, we see the definition is getting standardized. It's process, it's automation plus cognitive infusion, as well as it's the outcomes. So with that said, we see this definition getting standardized. How do we see this playing out into the wider digital transformation our clients are undergoing? So from a traditional legacy book of applications, process, and infrastructure, clients are trying to pull together the complexity of multiple tools and technologies as they're going through the journey of digital transformation. So we look, RPA is one of the core pillar, if not the whole pillar, but combined with AI and analytics, the use of customer experience and the user experience infused with the whole area of connected tech and the engineering that comes together. This forms one of the core pillar for as our clients undergo this digital transformation journey. So moving on from here, where we see the clients in this journey of automation. Interestingly, where we have seen this is a lot of clients, you would see this from the research as I talk along, are in different stages of transformation. Some of them are just kicked off their pilots. They're focused more on cost takeout, labor effort reduction, labor arbitrage, or bot arbitrage, what we call. How are they focused on tasks rather than journeys? As they continue to scale the organization, they're infusing of some more intelligence into automation. They're expanding the use cases, expanding the utility of bots, and how this is slowly gaining democratization and moving from tasks to journeys. And then moving further to the right, the platform approach. So we're saying, okay, it's not just the bots, but it's also wider platforms, and the platform ecosystems come together to drive the automation where it's becoming more strategic and kind of doing what we call the front to back digital journeys. And thereon kicking off into the wide, what we call the zero touch operations, which I think is a nirvana, to be candid. Not many clients, a handful of the clients believe they're probably one step away from that, including the greatest digital natives that we service. I think we're still away from the journey, probably a couple of years now as we look forward to. But we'll be interested to see, probably we will, when we talk to Henry and understand where they are in this journey, it would be interesting to see how they moved from one step to another step and what helped them to scale the ambition of automation. Moving further. Next slide, please. Right. So as I said, we recently conducted, Cognizant just concluded a 4,000 executives across Global 2000. This is a global survey. Interestingly, if you can just double down on the retail and the consumer goods, I think some of our clients who are on this call today, we've seen that the adoption, as you see the four rhythms of automation, as we've seen, very few clients are probably in stage 1 and stage 2. I think the potential is significant and immense. Some of them are experimenting with automation, the light blue and the medium blue boxes that you see, but very few of them, just about 10% and 3% in consumer goods, have kind of started taking enterprise-wide automation stories. So we believe this is a place to go forward. And we've also seen, specifically information technology or banking financial services industries, have probably taken a leap forward with 18% and 6%. They're probably kind of looking at a much higher impetus or focus on automation and expanded beyond the pilot stage. If we go further down, next slide, please. Where are they using automation, right? So fundamentally, it is varying by industries, but kind of comes back to three core areas. The first one, if you see in the retail, the contact center operations, I think typically this is where a lot of automation is kicked in. The takeover of voice automation, or what we call chatbots, and the whole infusion of voice analytics and intelligence around that. So that definitely has taken pretty well in this industry. Product information management, here, this is where there's significant data related work. So automation helps a lot to push the needle around data and data driven automation. So that's another area. Sales, marketing, and customer service is an area which is slowly gaining traction, but that probably gains a lot more prominence if you look at the travel and hospitality industry, where it's significantly used. Expanding further, we can start seeing the automation spreading across different end-to-end life cycle. It's being used in the supply chain, it's being used in the last mile delivery. So the use cases or the potential use of automation expands beyond the pure back office or just the core contact center operations into much wider business arena. So that's again based on the research and inputs that we've got. Please to the next slide. Yes. And the interesting fact, which is if we kind of we're segregating the front, middle, and back office, is a very different construct. If you're looking at the front office, more of the sales and marketing, looking at the customer service as middle, and then most of the back office functions around R&D, F&A, IT, or HR, and supply chain. We've seen the adoption rates differ, which is across the industries. What's most interesting takeaway from the slide is most of the clients have seen the return on investment within 12 months. And to us, this is a significant input. While clients are looking for an agile, quick return on investments, and again, probably a point as we discussed with Henry to understand how did McDonald's see their return on investment? Did they get it in 6 months, 12 months? Probably I'm not going to answer that for you, but that's an area that I think gives you the bang for the buck, really quick, agile, and it is not like an enterprise. I would not kind of talk about the large enterprise ERP or CRM projects, which is a 3-4 year budgets and the business is waiting for the benefits to come through. But these are really quick, fast outcome driven programs, and they span across the front, middle, and the back office. So next slide, please. All right, so now I think we kind of accelerated in the last few minutes about the definition of automation, where is it used, what stages some of our clients are all. We thought it may be a good point for us to pause right now, and we got a great audience on this call. Why don't we just get a quick poll out? James, if you could kindly pull up the poll. We'd like to see where we are in this journey.
Okay, so the poll is now live. We've got just 45 seconds to get that answered. So we've got about 15 seconds left, so if you could all get voting on that one. Just 5 seconds remaining. Bear with me, just coming through now. Okay, can everyone see the results there?
But looking at the answers that we've received, probably I think, James, we were very quick in pulling back the poll. But you know what? It reflects about 20% have said they're in early stage, about 9% are in a fairly advanced stage, and only about 17% are in the enterprise stage. So kind of, I think I'm actually more positive from this poll compared to the research across the G2000. So seems like we've got almost a fairly equal balance between the participants around early stage versus an enterprise wide, which I think is a good start and probably a segue for the next stage. Thanks for that, James. So if you can just go back to our presentation. Thank you. So as we talk about the stages of maturity and where the clients are, I think it's really important for us to reflect on what's happening out there in the technology landscape, right? So with that said, I would request Adam to probably take us to the next couple of slides to just talk through the interesting space of technology and what's happening out there. Over to you, Adam.
Thanks, Guti, and good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, wow, there's an awful lot happening, as this slide says, in the retail technology front. So I do not envy you decision makers out there trying to pick some winners from this lot. So I think I have it easy this afternoon. I get to talk about one aspect of this, which is automation. But just before we move on, I mean, I think there's a lot of things you see on here. Guti's already referenced chatbots, for example. You know, personally, I'm always interested in the payment technology side of things and the AR, VR side of things. But a lot of these that are becoming communities of vendors and industries in their own right are very kind of automation applicable, I would say, or adjacent, in that the technology I'm going to speak about now is enhancing and additive in some way to this huge landscape that's growing out there. So let's move on and just look at automation. Next slide, please. So I suppose here's the bad news. This is what automation looks like in 2021. So no less complex in many ways, but I think if there's a couple of quick highlights to take out of here, I mean, let's first of all just tip a hat to where this all began. If you look at RPA there, you know, third from the top, I think it's really important to still hone in on that, especially for those in that poll that were in the early stages. You know, you have to see this as your big engine room, right? And sort of there's no putting this back in the box now, as they say. There's a pool of digital labor out there now that is available to you from a wide variety of vendors, not just my own firm. And you know, that ability to sort of elastically dial up capacity, if you will, to perform rules-based tasks, of which there are many in every organization, that is just as potent as it was 10 years ago when I first got my hands on it. So I think that's the backbone, even to this day, of any kind of modern intelligent automation program. But you look at everything else that's come around it now and is orbiting around RPA, and it gets fascinating. So in the interest of time, if I just pick the top two, as they're very poignant these days, I mean, there's a huge amount of interest now in, well, given the potency of RPA and automation in general, it suddenly becomes a very material thing how quickly you can get from concept to something that's ready to be built, to something that's built in production, returning value and savings in the same financial year, preferably the same quarter in which you identified it. So there are a huge amount of vendors and there's a huge amount of effort and really exciting technology going into how can you use tooling to help you identify pipeline more frequently. And there's lots more we can touch on later. You know, I suppose AI and ML is something that is always catches the eye. You know, to not sound too cliche about it, but it has, quote, never been easier to integrate that stuff with an automation program. It is a relatively trivial affair these days for a bot to call upon an ML library, for example, in the middle of a process flow, do the clever, intelligent, cognitive piece, and return a result, and then a bot to carry on that workflow to the end. So I think what's nice about the whole vendor landscape that I sit in is all the platforms are becoming more open. Thankfully, the prevalence of things like APIs make connecting and stitching this stuff together easier than it's ever been. So let's go a little bit further. So what does that mean? What are the big benefits? What are the best exemplars in your industry doing today? Well, some things haven't changed really. So if we look at efficiency, you know, we can't get past this, right? I mean, a lot of people's route into automation is there's a massive cost play to be had here and a massive efficiency play. I mean, there's nothing quite like, as I said, digital labor that can be turned on at scale. It can't be beaten on price. You know, all the cliche things you've heard many times before about playing the 24-hour clock and things going across departments and multiple languages and time zones back to back is all absolutely true. So I think the exemplars in the industry, you know, are able to these days drive massive efficiencies with automation, and so they should. I think what's a more interesting question these days is what do you do with that? So if you're achieving the sorts of results you can see here through driving big efficiencies with automation, there's some interesting options that then presents, right? You know, so one might be you realize those cost savings and nothing wrong with that especially with market conditions in the last 2 years. But something I find intriguing is increasingly mature users of automation are routing some of the savings you see here, almost making that a direct funnel for innovation. So, either by freeing up people's capacity and the human capacity of talent, or freeing up cash, quite frankly, to double down on innovation elsewhere. That's where that sort of traditional side of automation gets very interesting. There's also a scale play here. I think everyone can appreciate that. If you look at what's happened in the world the last 2 years, there are certain processes in all your business, hopefully related to order volumes, where the sheer scale of volumes of transactions and repetitions of tasks and things to be done has increased like never before, well beyond the boundaries of anyone's headcount. So quite frankly, to keep pace with that, to be competitive, it's absolutely appropriate to be augmenting your teams with digital labor, with digital workers, with automation. And as you can see here, there's some pretty eye-watering volumes of tasks that can be done by these machines safely, securely, thanks to the maturity of this technology. And then probably most tantalizing of all down the bottom there, kind of competitiveness, differentiation, operating in this modern, highly competitive, highly e-commerce driven society that we're now in. Automation does afford you a different dimension to that. And I might be so bold as to say it's going to be increasingly difficult to compete with your peers if you're purely reliant on people alone. I think what good looks like increasingly is the sort of, you're trying to back off a certain amount of tasks and certain types of tasks to machines that they're ideally suited to pursue, thus freeing your talented people in all aspects of the business to be highly competitive, highly customer orientated, highly sales orientated in my case, to drive the kind of results that you see here. Guti, do you mind? I know obviously some of these data points are yours. Are there any that particularly stand out to you that you'd call out as particularly resonant?
Yeah, perfect, Adam. I think you covered it pretty much there. I think the two key points I want to leave with is, I think, as you said, the life of automation has moved beyond efficiency into helping clients build scale. The whole area of auto management and the whole area of bringing quality in large scale transactions, specifically for this industry in the e-commerce arena, right? The third one, I think, is the market differentiation. The saying, how can you use automation as your competitive advantage, right? So moving away from just thinking about the single trick pony of automation, about efficiency, to move into a completely new paradigm about saying, can we actually reset our entire operating model around automation? So those are the things that I want to leave it for this group. Thank you.
Thanks, Guti. Let's go a little further and then come to the end. So a quick few examples, and then I think I'm the only thing standing between you and hearing from Henry. So let's move on very, very quickly. I just thought I'd touch on this. Kind of for those, particularly those people in the relatively earlier stages, something I hope gives you some comfort here is you're not alone, and this is not new anymore. So the people on this call and many other experts beyond, there's a huge amount of case history now as to where automation's potency and applicability is in retail and consumer. So I'm not sure if you can see there the sort of the different color scheme. I'm colorblind, so that doesn't help. But you'll see the stuff in the blue there is sort of very, very high capacity to automate. Well-worn territory. Many of your peers will have done something like this before somewhere in the world. But even the stuff in black there, that stuff may be less commonly automated. But I think, as you saw from that bewildering amount of technology that's hitting the market, I tend to always start from a place of, well, assume the technology does it, and now let's figure out, let's get very, very highly focused on exactly what we're trying to achieve in merchandising or planning, for example. So, you're talking about a technology that can touch any system, any data type in your business. Relatively straightforwardly if you wish to grant it the credentials to do so. So the technology is rarely the barrier. It's much more about having a highly developed sense of what you want to achieve, what questions you're trying to answer in some of these areas you've not been able to answer to date. But what I would say is we'd be happy to talk offline with anyone. There's an awful lot of ground being covered here all the time. And what I've found about our industry is actually even people in your competitive set are often quite happy to share. As evidenced by Henry this afternoon. So it's unlike some other areas of tech where people are very guarded about this stuff. If I look at the the contact center space over there on the far right in the payment solutions column. I've seen some amazing knowledge sharing between people in the same category of retail, and there's enormous amounts of investment going on in that space. So lots of good stuff to share with you offline if that would be a benefit to you. Equally, I just also wanted to talk about, I suppose, the non-retail specific side of life. So this is applicable to your industry and indeed every industry. Probably even greater case history here, which is don't lose sight of your back office, your shared service GBS environments and that sort of stuff. There is still enormous mileage in automating in this case, finance and accounting. It would be just as true if we were looking at HR or IT. So I'm pretty sure I speak for everyone when I would assume that everybody's month-end close is not exactly where they'd like it to be still. There's still huge amounts of mileage in automating some of the things that go into that, like journal posting, balance sheet reconciliation. So going back to what I was mentioning about efficiency, what a lot of people do in this space is drive very high volume efficiency automation in the back office. And that will often free up time, resource, money to pursue some of those more front-facing, customer-orientated, supply chain-orientated activities on the previous slide. So this is a huge space to explore, make no mistake of that. And just as we move on to, I think, kind of one of my last slides here, I'd also say there's another category of pipeline emerging, which is that of the individual. So regardless of what department you sit in, regardless of what team you sit in, all of us have a certain amount of baked in inefficiency into our daily life. We all send too many reports. We all build too many of them, even though it's the same template we use last QBR, last meeting, last what have you. There's a bunch of little bee stings that affect every single employee in a company who is using a desktop or a laptop. So another way you might think about pipelining using modern automation is individually those little bee sting use cases. It's going to be hard to justify purposing an automation just to save me 30 minutes a week. But if 1,000 people in your organization did that a couple of times a quarter, that's an enormous productivity saving. And often that stuff is low complexity, relatively easy to automate, very shareable, very transferable from one employee to another. So you don't need to build an individual automation for T&E expense reporting for every employee in your company. You build it once and share it with the world, sort of thing. So just wanted to put that out there. There are multiple veins of pipeline to be had here beyond the retail specific, the back office, right down to the employee level. So I think that's sort of the main bit I just wanted to cover. So thank you for your kind attention. I think this last slide is self-explanatory, and I think we'll finish off with one more poll before we hear from Henry, right?
Wonderful, thank you, Adam. And to everybody, it's hi, I'm Duncan Mears. Sorry, very, very late joining. I had some technical issues, but delighted to be here with you all. As Adam said, we absolutely have another very quick poll. So James, over to you.
Yeah, that's open now. So I just allowed a little bit more time on this one for people.
Okay, basically what we're trying to better understand is, which business areas are you particularly looking to or areas of focus for automation within your organization?
Great, we can see everyone's numbers coming in now.
This one's going to be interesting, actually. How are you doing, James?
Yeah, we've got about 16 seconds to go. And we're almost there. Just one or two more coming in. Yeah, we're just finishing up now.
Thank you, James.
There we go.
Wow, very, very evenly split. So interesting. So back office 42% and sort of contact center 42%. And interestingly, core business only 12%. This is quite fascinating, actually. Where we are actually finding the greatest demand right now is actually in the sort of core business processes, particularly around supply chain and logistics. We're finding that a lot of organizations have got, they've spent a lot of their time and effort trying to automate, trying to get a better customer experience, but where we're finding that they haven't made those investments in the back office. So frustratingly, I think organizations are a lot better with what they're doing in the sort of customer experience, but are actually sort of being let down by the back office processes. So we are seeing a significant sort of reemergence of automation in sort of the back office area. So if you're an organisation that aren't sort of trying to work the back office as well, I really would encourage you to the supply chain. So we've heard from two industry specialists from Cognizant and from Automation Anywhere. Delighted to hand over to Henry. Henry has been running an automation program with McDonald's for about 6 years, hundreds of processes, and we thought it would be wonderful for us to sort of, or for Henry to share his experiences with the sort of collective group here as to the benefits and how McDonald's has benefited and where they're focused. So with that, Henry, over to you.
Thank you, Duncan. Thank you everyone for inviting me to the panel. Definitely a lot of great information. I can't echo what Guti and Adam has talked about because we have fallen into those same journeys as well. We probably have started, let me give a little bit of background about me. I run the COE for Intelligent Automation and Continuous Improvement. Like Duncan said, we've been doing it for about 6 years. Just like everyone probably on this call, we started with a POC. The interesting thing about our POC, I actually built 50% of it. So I have to, my partner now that I have in Automation Anywhere, a gentleman over there said the best way to learn is for you to do it. And I'm like, you want me to build a POC? And he was like, yeah, because you want to really understand what the functionalities, and if you're going to be the lead, it's going to help you promote your case. I was like, okay, sounds good. So I was successful. It was a little clunky, I needed some optimization to happen. And so Automation Anywhere helped me through that, but it was a success for us. And it was really the launch for McDonald's. What we did was we didn't know where to go after. So we did an assessment globally. I work for GBS, Global Business Service. So everything Adam's talking about, that back office, and Duncan talking about that back office, that's all we do. So I had our hands in for the last 6 years in the back office world. Very interesting, a lot of gains to be made, a lot of reports, as Adam talked about closing. There's a lot of efficiencies that can be built over in the closing section of accounting. But we started with an assessment. We wanted to see what was really out there, what could be really automated. So luckily for us, we have sites in Russia, Australia, UK, France, and Germany. And we really want to see what automation opportunities we had out there. Luckily for us, we had 300 plus ideas, but we only could choose one. And so typically I would tell you not to choose the biggest capacity or biggest ROI project to be your first. But for us, it was a leadership decision because it was going to be a huge cost avoidance if we could put this in. So what I did, I needed to solicit some help. So I called a couple of friends over at Cognizant and said, hey, I need you guys to help me run this project. Project was a huge success. We saved probably about hiring 20 plus consultants and contractors to do this process. And so automation gave us a huge cost avoidance and a huge win. Well, as you know, when you get a huge win, your leadership gets that appetite. They want more. They want more. So before we did that, I decided, because we were borrowing Automation Anywhere at the time. And because of the vast and the cry for more and more, I said, you know what? Let's buy it. Let's buy it. Let's go all in. And so from that point on, so like Guti talked about earlier, we joined forces with Cognizant and Automation Anywhere. So Cognizant is my managed service partner, and AA is my software provider. And I felt that bringing the one thing about having those two, and each one can say it, I said, I need a strategic partner. I need to know who's going to be in here when the stuff is on fire. And that was a lot of conversation I gave, and both of them rose to occasions, and we signed contracts. So to fast forward a little bit, before we really wanted to get started with all of these great automations that came from across the globe, we wanted to create a COE. So we went out, created a COE with Cognizant help. We helped to define a lot of our documentations, a lot of our mechanics to our COE, which was very hopeful in launching the COE. Automation Anywhere has continuously pushed us to say, hey, here's some new technology. And as Adam pulled up that landscape, please do not let that scare you. That is an awesome landscape, and it depends on where you are in your journey, where you're going to pick up a lot of those vendors along the way. So it's great to see from 6 years to now, how many different industries out there that are trying to pull this automation landscape together. So I would tell you, the biggest thing for us is, I will urge anyone, help is awesome. And if with these two partners that we had, we've seen success over the years. We are in a point of scale right now. We've all been about GBS. And so this year we're going outside the walls of GBS. So we're going to start talking about some of the marketing, supply chains, technology, and things like that. So it's going to be an interesting year for us. But we've seen a lot of success with our RPA program, Intelligent Automation Program. And I'm excited to see it grow even more and more, because we got a lot more to go. As you saw in that landscape, I've only touched about about a handful of those vendors. But with this landscape growing such in a fast pace, it just is exciting to see what the future has in store for us. And for us, it's been an exciting thing. We've had a lot of capacity gains. The main mission for us was not about ROI. It was really about building capacity and cost avoidance, because we're a GBS organization. So our goal is to bring work into GBS. But as we know, it does have an ROI and a bottom line effect as well. So, I think it's around picking the right projects. Some of the things I wanted to leave from some key takeaways here. I know we got short on time. I want to make sure we get some questions here, but when you build your COE, make sure you connect with your partners. That's the one thing I didn't do when I first started my first project. I thought it was a business tool. I went out there on my own. We're going to do this by ourselves. And what happened? IT came, security came, and they slowed me down for about 4 to 6 weeks. So it was a lesson learned. And as time matured with our program, that other group called internal audit steps in, and and risk management. So what I would urge you, if you're building or you're in the midst or you are a mature COE, make sure you connect with those partners. They not that they're there to derail it, because I think all of us are in the space of automation, but having them on board with you, it makes things a lot more easier. So we have on our COE, we have those groups that sit on our COE, and it's been a huge difference from my first project. So that's one thing I would leave you. I think education along the way makes it a lot easier as well. As we learn new things, I try to bring in our other IT, definitely IT into the fold, but I think educating along the way is going to be very helpful. That's been a very success for us. And the tone from the top, I'm gonna lead at the tone from the top. You got to have sponsor support. When you start talking about things like automation, it's a very frightful thing to a lot of folks. They think it's going to replace my job. Well, coming from having a CI team, it's all about building more value work. We want to get rid of that non-value work, that work that you shouldn't be doing anyway. You should be more on the analytical side of things. So having CI has been great for me. I've had the department for about almost 2 years now, and we go in with the notion of re-engineer processes, then automate. Re-engineer process, then automate. It will save you a lot of rework, as I learned over my journey here, not taking that into account. So those are some things that I will leave you. I think I just want to also echo some things that Adam talked about, some of the shifts with the industry about process discovery, process mining. How do we get to making decisions faster? So for something on my radar for next year is really to tap those two areas, because even though I have a CI team, as everything transition, you remember, I don't know, I'm probably a lot of people, I'm gonna date myself a little bit. We got the post-it notes on the wall from a CI perspective. We have a wall full of post-it notes. great methodology. But I think with process mining and task mining, we got to get to a quicker place to get making decisions on what are our target areas for automation. So definitely love to see that at the top, because it's definitely something that we want to go after for next year. But it's been a great ride. I mean, like I said, I'm going to pause. I mean, I'll let whatever questions I'm willing to answer to talk about our journey. I could talk way more about some more lessons learned. I've had a lot of battle scars. But I'm going to tell you, the one good thing about having battle scars is about having partners with you along the way. So all I can do is urge you, sometimes we think we know it all, but you need a little help there. So, and that's what these two partners on the screen have done for us over at McDonald's. So I want to pause there to make sure that if the panelists or anybody on the panel has any questions that they want me to address, or if we have any questions in chat, I am open to answering any questions that come across.
Wonderful. Thank you, Henry. I'm very conscious of time. We only build this for 45 minutes. What I heard from you today is you've got to get support from IT, audit, education, and get support from smart support from the top. But final point or final question probably, is there any one lesson or anything you would have done differently that you can share with the audience today? In terms of helping, because I think everyone's listened to the amazing success you've had, but is there anything you'd have done differently?
I touched on it. I think it's about, well, I'm going to say it's a little bit of two. I think the first part is bringing other groups along the way with you in your journey. It's not just a I journey, it's a we journey, and it's a team. And that's one thing that I did not do, because I was listening. This is a business ran, you could do it all with the business. And I found out very quickly that was not the case. So I would just urge, as you learn more things, bring your partners along. I'm telling you, it will be a huge win for you when you do that. And I think for me, having just the other last thing, just get your sponsor leadership, because if they're talking about it at the top, it makes my job and my team's job a lot easier. So those are probably the two things that I would say, I didn't do it at first. So I would have brought them in on the first conversation. Heck, I would have probably brought them in on the POC if I could have. But just bring your partners along. That's something I would definitely do. Well, I've done it because I put them on my COE, but that was something I learned. I learned the hard way. I mean, 4 to 6 weeks is a long delay in your project. So.
Wonderful. Thank you, Henry. I'm very conscious of time. Lorraine, perhaps if we can go to the final slide. We're over time. I wanted to just say a big thank you to Henry, Adam, to Guti for their time today.